Okay, meeting is now streaming live. It says it's recording. I'm still thinking about it there. As long as it's not coming through the sound, funny, should be in good shape.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the special joint workshop meeting of the Pleasant View Planning Commission City Council this October 21st, 2020. I got 6:02 now, so we're together to get some words of wisdom, I think, from Chris Roywall from EDC. Is it EDC Utah, EDC Northern Utah? How do we?
Well, I'll explain all that once you
All right.
once you set it up. I'll help you connect it.
All right. This is hopefully going to be not a super long meeting. If we got some questions. We're recording it. Some people were not able to join with us. Laurie, is everybody in that's asked to be in?
Yeah.
Looks like, okay. Let's just, without further ado, let's just turn the time over to Chris and
Great. Thank you. Maybe just help me with everybody that is on the call. Maybe just a real brief introduction, then I can kind of make sure who everybody is. Is that okay?
All right, I'm Mayor Call. To my left here.
I'm Councilman Bailey.
Let's do the city council first. Go ahead, council members.
I'm Councilmember Sarah Uri. I don't think anybody else is here right now.
I think David and Ann were asked for it to be recorded.
Yeah.
Planning Commission.
I'm Keith Priest. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission, have been for going on 3 years now.
I'm Andy Neff. I've been on the Planning Commission for a couple terms.
Can't hear you, Alicia.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'm Alicia Lund. I'm on the Planning Commission since the end of 2018.
Jill.
Did you say me?
Sure.
I couldn't tell if you said Jill or Bill. I'm Jill. I'm the city planner.
Did I cover everybody there?
That's it.
I think Bill's on by phone, isn't he? Or is he?
He was driving.
He was driving. He was going to try it. He's on his way to St. George to the conference. So.
Yeah, he
Right.
told me about a half hour ago or something that he might try to drop in.
All righty, that's us.
Well, thank you. And thanks for including me in your work session. I know we chatted with some of the team a few weeks ago, visited a couple of your sites, and thought it would be a benefit to get with as many of you in a work session and just sort of give you the landscape in terms of economic development, potential clients that may come to your city, and kind of how all that works and is put together. So I don't know some of you. My name is Chris Royball. I'm the president of the newly formed Northern Utah Economic Alliance. So that's a regional partnership that was basically founded by Davis and Weber County about a year and a half ago. The reason for the partnership, which I think is a good one, is that we start to market Davis and Weber as a region. And when I say market, I mean mostly to national site selectors, companies that are growing, wanting to look at Utah in general, and then where do they go from there? So I think it's an effort to get out of the business of sort of saying, Ogden versus Layton versus Farmington versus wherever. This is a 600,000 population base. That's how companies look at it from a labor perspective. They don't really draw, city lines like we all do. So I think it's important to know that if a company comes in, they need 100,000 square feet, they're going to hire a couple hundred workers. We'll talk about real estate here in a minute, but they want to know that they can draw or that they can hire those 200 people, they're likely to be sort of in a radius of probably Weber and Davis County. You may draw a little bit from Box Elder County and from some other neighboring areas, but that's our labor pool. That's what we're selling as a region. Right now, interestingly, we are leaking out. Now, these are pre-COVID numbers, so this is a little different with some of the telecommuting that we've got going on right now, but we leak out about 100,000 of our labor pool every day between Davis and Weber, mostly to Salt Lake County. Okay, now we do migrate in about 60,000. A lot of that's related to Hill Air Force Base and some of the other major employers. So, but we have a net out migration of 40,000 people. So one of our mandates is to try to reverse that to some extent. We'd like to see that labor pool be utilized locally within our regions and create some employment centers within the Davis and Weber marketplace. As you all know, if you live, say, somewhere like Layton and you're commuting to Draper because you have a technology job down there, you might be able to do it, in 40, 50 minutes now, but think about how that's going to look in, say, 5 or 10 years. You're going to be well over an hour. I-15 just continue, our growth patterns aren't really slowing down. You all know that better than I do. So part of our mandate is to create some employment centers, some job centers, some industrial and office market locations within our own region so people can stay and work and grow, in our region. So having said that, we've kind of started our database, if you will, of places where we can either build or we've got existing space. You all know about some of the employment centers like BDO in Ogden, or say the Freeport Center in Clearfield that employs several thousand people. We'd like to find other locations like that. I think we talked to some of you when we looked at your property that is adjacent to I-15. I think there is something like a couple hundred acres there. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we want to dive in a little bit deeper, understand that better, understand what's it going to take to get that property shovel ready so that we can market it better to companies that are looking at our region. So for example, right now, we just hosted a company out of Wisconsin. They're a manufacturing company. They really were looking more at existing space. So they sort of draw themselves to BDO or Freeport when they're looking at Northern Utah. Now, in their case, they're also looking at a site in Salt Lake County. They're looking at one in Tooele County. So part of our job is just to get them to Northern Utah, have them consider our region out of the gate. As many of you know, when people come to Utah, they sort of think Salt Lake City, greater Salt Lake City is all of the labor and industrial market for Utah. So part of our job is to say, hey, there's a substantial workforce and opportunity north. We understand that Salt Lake and Utah County, for example, will certainly grow and get their fair share, and we don't have any issues with that. But we do think that we've missed out on some opportunities to push projects to Northern Utah so that we can have a chance to bid on them. So I think you all have worked a little bit with Holland Wilbanks at Weber County in responding to some of these requests for information. Now EDC Utah, so I'll get back to answering your question. So we're affiliated with EDC Utah. So when Davis and Weber County put together the partnership, they actually lent that contract to EDC Utah and then hired me to run it. So I office in Farmington. The reason I'm affiliated with EDC Utah, and I think it was smart to do that, is that all of the state leads that are at least nationally looking at Utah run through EDC Utah. So the Governor's Office of Economic Development has contracted with EDC Utah. They start there and then they filter out from there. So I'm on weekly calls with the EDC Utah business development team to make sure that if they say, hey, we've got a project that's considering this kind of workforce, these kind of real estate needs, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, we think we've got 4 or 5 or 6 properties or locations up north that we want to get in the mix. And I think, say 5 years ago, maybe collectively we weren't competing quite as well, say as Salt Lake and Utah County. So that's one of our mandates. And then, of course, the better we understand your properties and your locations and where they are related to infrastructure, the better we can get them out in front of a client. And so I think we're kind of in the process with cities like yours to make sure that, one, we have a good database of where all those commercial opportunities are. And I would say that in general, my organization principally works on office and industrial projects. I know that you at the city will also entertain retail expansions. We'll help you with that. We don't necessarily go out and recruit retail. Retail for us is a little bit of follow-on activity to having core industry in office and industrial. So I know that Holland from the county plays in that arena a little bit heavier than we do, but we're willing to help. We want to make sure that if you have somebody who is looking at your region on a retail basis, a lot of times they'll just contact your city officials directly. We want to make sure that you've got good regional data beyond just your own city data, so that if we can help with the county and the region to give those decision makers information about your location, a lot of times they're looking at sort of concentric circles too about, okay, how many people live and work within 5 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles. And a lot of times that sort of goes beyond your city boundaries in some cases. So if we can help that way, we certainly want to do it. So once we get real good data on the shovel-ready sites, or even if they're not quite shovel-ready. So for example, with your 200-acre site, I think there's still some infrastructure. I know that there are some industrial users there, but maybe talk to me again a little bit about what infrastructure still needs to be put in place. I know that we had this discussion when I came up the other day, but maybe, remind me again, and then let's follow up on that.
Well, a couple things we talked about is that we're going to proactively do, and that we're working on right now, is one is a regional detention basin down in that area. Second was we went up to that railroad crossing, if you remember, and talked about let's go ahead and get that crossing in instead of waiting
right
till somebody's come and look at it. The other basically it just kind of dead ends at the all the improvements where the industrial currently dead ends. So we do have master road plans, but we're hesitant to put any roadways in there until we see how people want to chop up that property.
And you've got how many landowners are on that property again?
Jill, do you know?
You're
I mean, I don't
muted,
even-
Jill.
I want to say there's at least 8.
Oh, wow.
I think it might have been 9. But
Yeah, it could be 9.
Okay.
What
Yeah, and I
200?
think, that's another challenge that we need to see if we can work through, that when you have multiple, landowners, it's difficult in some cases to master plan, that entire area. Now, obviously if we had one or two landowners, we could say, hey, how can we help master plan this? Is there intent to be develop the product, or is there intent to develop the site themselves? Are they looking to sell? So we probably ought to dig a little deeper on that in terms of understanding who the landowners are, what their intents are, so that when we bring potential projects to your city, we can understand that connection a little bit better. So I'm gonna make a note that we probably need to do a little bit of homework with your help on who those landowners are, What's their history with the ground? What intentions do they have if you know them? That would sort of help us understand, where all that's happening. Now, we don't mind bringing projects to you and to those landowners and saying, hey, look, maybe you don't have this master plan yet, but we've got a company that needs, 50 acres, 20 acres, 100 acres, whatever the case may be, and say, is anybody willing to, are we close enough infrastructure wise to try to, perhaps strike a deal? I look at that property like that could be a really impressive little employment center. You have some industrial users there now, and obviously, great access and visibility off of I-15. So that, going down the road, that's going to be, I think that's going to be an important piece of property. I think most of you know that BDO in Ogden is almost built out. I think they can do about another 1 million square feet of industrial. And they've already, just since this summer, they have signed 750,000 square feet worth of leases. So their momentum is going to really almost put them out of business here, probably in the next year or two. So it's a good opportunity for us to say, okay, where else in the region can we do industrial development, office development? Just to give you another just sort of perspective on the office side, I'm not sure if we've got sites in your city that will really fit so much for office, but we want to see the office development grow too. We've been a little thin in northern Utah, but there was just a really big master plan project signed in Farmington City last night for 1 million to 1.5 million square feet of Class A office space for a business park. So it's really great news, not just for Farmington, but for the region. And let me tell you why, because now we've got other office developers are going to start to look at our northern Utah in general, and they're just going to start looking at sites heading north. So there's a TOD site in Clearfield that'll have some office. There's a TOD site in Layton that will have some office. There's a couple of properties in sort of greater Ogden that will have some Class A office, and then we'll just sort of see where it goes from there. But so we'll have, around 3 million square feet of office that we just haven't had. So we've got a company that needs 40,000 square feet, 50,000 square feet of Class A office. They literally just turn around and head back to Salt Lake County right now.
Hey,
So
can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead.
If just real quick, to comment on something that you said just a little bit earlier of, you kind of answered that question of meeting with those property owners, within the 200 acre site, sorry. Of, asking what their intent is and proactively helping guide that intent, if they didn't know already, and providing those opportunities. And then can you please help me understand what Class A office space, what that would look like?
So Class A is the highest grade in terms of build out and tenant finishes. So anything in, say, downtown Salt Lake City would be considered Class A office space. So there might be Class B and C space, or Class B and Class C. That would be lower grade. It would still be an office use. So some of the flex product that you see is like a Class B type space. It's not the finishes that certain kinds of office users would want. So obviously Class A space is much more expensive. It's $25 to $30 a square foot to lease that kind of space. So typically companies that are, are regional in focus, they're software developers or financial services companies, healthcare companies, people that, need higher end office space. Some of the product downtown Ogden, would be considered, close to Class A space. They're not getting the rates that, say they would get in Salt Lake City, but say, for example, like the Market Star building or something like that would be, close to Class A. But yeah, we would welcome a chance to maybe, and I don't know, I know you've got a pretty big retail corridor off of your exit too that I know you're interested in. And, we could offer some help on data with that too. But we're really interested in the industrial site, the 200-acre site. And then anything else that you all want to discuss. We obviously, for us, a master planned site is better. When companies come calling, when they see that you're sort of shovel ready, infrastructure ready, you're ready to go, they know that they can just get in there quicker. Now, companies usually come and say, hey, we don't have time, we need to take existing space. Well, then it's got to be something up out of the ground. Other companies, a lot of companies on the industrial side are okay with the time frame of building. Unless it's a very sophisticated manufacturing company. I mean, these industrial sites can get up pretty quickly, a lot quicker than, say, a Class A office space. So those can be up, in 12 to 14, 15 months. And a lot of times that will meet the company's time frame. So as long as the site is mostly ready from an infrastructure standpoint, we can then put those sites, in play. I should mention too that we do work with a lot of local companies that are expanding in the area. They're already here. In a lot of cases, they have concerns about real estate or labor to grow from, say, 50 employees to 100 or 200. So we work pretty heavily with a lot of local industry that we want to keep them here. I'll give you a good example of a company that we didn't keep here that I think had this happened now, we could have maybe turned that around a little bit. But the software consulting firm Pluralsight, you may have heard that name, headquartered in Farmington. They grew their company to about 1,500 employees, which is a pretty big number for Northern Utah. That would have made them one of the larger employers outside of Hill Air Force Base and some of the government numbers. They ended up building their headquarter building down in Draper. They wanted to be closer to that technology market down there between Utah County, Salt Lake County. I think they made a mistake. I think they could have owned a good chunk of the tech market in Northern Utah. They wanted to grow from 1,500 to 5,000 people. I think we could have supplied that with all the leakage that I talked about before about the companies that or the talent that's leaving, because if we have the opportunities here, companies want to stay. So Pluralsight had about 80,000 square feet of Class A office space at Station Park in Farmington. We were concerned that, that would create a little bit of a vacuum here. We had 3 companies take that space before they even left this summer. So I think, and that's in a really, really slow office market, as you know, with COVID and all the telecommuting going on. Companies are, at least temporarily, they have a lot of their workers at home. And so the office market's been hit, for example, a lot harder on the COVID side. But even with COVID going on, we had 3 companies take that 80,000 square feet. So I think it speaks to, there's lots of young growing companies in our region that want to stay and grow here. If we can help them, if we can find them a home, if we can find them real estate, if we can find them the labor. So that's what, and we can only do that if we're working with you all to understand what you have to offer at the local level, because eventually these projects get to you. You're the ones that have to sort of, guide and direct them and be a partner with them. This business park that we're doing with Farmington, Farmington, had to sort of jump in and help them put that master plan together. So at some point, you all have to be a big partner there.
So is that where we need to start? What do we need to do as a city? Do we need to start with meeting those landowners and have that conversation? Is that step number 1? Or
yeah, I think step number 1 is to help you, and we can help you do this too, is to help kind of create a database of commercial properties. Everything from where you all see, and a lot of these properties are not listed. So for example, the 200 acres out there, you all correct me, but I don't think most of that property is listed with the brokerage firm, is it?
That's correct.
So that's okay. We want to identify everything that's listed, not listed, commercially. Let's break it down into sort of retail, potential office, potential industrial, and look at those, say 5-acre properties and up, and create a good solid database that you all sort of sign off on and say, yeah, those are all of our commercial properties and sites. And from there, get your advice on how does the city see those areas being master planned, and who owns the property? Do we have willing, sellers, and what kind of, has the development community come and approached you and the landowners, sort of outside of the economic development framework to come in and make inquiry, which I'm sure they have in some places. So we just want to kind of be in tune with that. So I would say first, help create a good solid database that then we would try to keep updated quarterly, because those properties change hands, things move around. We don't want to come around 6 months from now and say, hey, tell us, there's a 50-acre site. Oh, well, that's been bought and sold and something's happening there. So we would expect
part of that inventory, and maybe this goes to Sarah's question. You don't want just to know that there's a piece of property there. I mean, if we can identify the owner, that we've talked to the owner, they're a willing seller,
The infrastructure,
Yes, absolutely. All of that. What's sort of the market? What do we think the market price is for that property? As best we can guess, if it's not, hasn't traded hands, in the past few years. But yeah, we want to create a good database, answer all of those questions that you just touched base on, so that then when we get a project or even an inquiry, we've got a really quick, up-to-date database, and then we can call and work with you and say, hey, we've got a couple of potential users. What about this 10-acre parcel that we talked to you all about? One, is it still active and updated? What are the owners doing? And then we can sort of feed those projects into the request for information, whether it's coming from EDC Utah or from a developer or from the county or wherever, and we can move a little quicker. And it helps you to master plan those areas and start to work with, potentially some of the landowners on, what they may or may not like to do. I mean, obviously, there's only so much you can do on the public side if there's not a private interest in, moving that land forward.
but if we come up with a good plan, like just to reiterate what the mayor said, so the things that you're looking for are the property owners, what is the interest been in the history, what interest now, the infrastructure, what are some of the other key things that you need in that database?
I mean, that's close to it. I mean,
Okay.
I think we need to know who the landowner is, how big the parcel is. We want to break them down into probably retail, office, and industrial.
Okay.
You could help us do that.
And Jill gets that information to you, and you guys stay in contact and in touch a lot.
Our regional organization will keep the active database, and then we can almost respond on your behalf at that point when we have a really good database. Otherwise, we're sort of going back and forth every time we get an inquiry. Oh, call Pleasant View, see what's happening. That way, if we keep that database updated quarterly, we can immediately shoot sites to the site selectors, to EDC Utah, and even for yourself, people come to you directly. You guys get plenty of these phone calls directly too from interested parties. Okay, that should be able to help you talk a little bit more intelligently about, what could potentially be done.
Do you want traffic counts and leakage counts, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, any of that data is good for us. Any of your demographic data, sort of daytime population, Any of that is good. Now, keep in mind, typically when companies are talking to us, they're looking at regional, they
Yeah.
want, they're looking at you as sort of a regional play for labor. So they're collecting data for the labor pool more regionally. But when it comes to the site, obviously, hey, your site is either in your city or it's, in one of the other cities, or it's in Weaver County. So the better we're armed with current data. And then the other thing that we do with that data too, say for example, that 200 acres was a little bit closer to shovel ready. We understood what the landowners were going to do. We would then market that to our national database of corporate site selectors. We have about 800 of them. We don't like to harass them unless we have something really cool to tell them. So if I know that, say, for example, BDO they've spec'd a 500,000 square foot industrial building that's on the market, we want to let those site selectors know what's happening. So for example, now that we've got this business park approved and sort of infrastructure is coming, we'll try to do some proactive outreach marketing with all of our national people that we deal with, so that it's a little bit of a teaser to say, hey, we know about Utah, Northern Utah, you guys need a little bit more education. We're going to help you. Here's the labor. Oh, and by the way, here's a great industrial site if and when your tenants are looking in the Western United States, 1, 2, at Utah, 3, Northern Utah, and then, we go from there. So we'll do some outreach marketing when we have the available data. We try to do at least bi-monthly mailings of some sort. Sometimes it's just to announce a really cool company that's expanded in our region. I mean, success always breeds success, right? So when Northrop Grumman says they're going to announce and hire 3,500 people at Falcon Hill and build 900,000 square feet of Class A office space, we kind of want to let the world know about that. So that's like, oh, what's Northrop doing? Oh, they've got a contract with Hill Air Force Base. Great. Maybe there's other vendors and suppliers that would have an interest in that and, want to be in our market too. Now, yes, we have a tight labor market, but our labor market's not going away in terms of, we still have one of the youngest labor pools in the country. We have a lot of young kids still coming out of high school and colleges that need careers here locally if we can help them find it. And so that's kind of our intent. We understand that there's not as much competition up north with companies sort of stealing labor from each other. There's a little bit of it, but on the one hand.
But Chris, let's be realistic right now. That's one of the biggest concerns and problems that all these companies in DDO and in Ogden and the Weber Davis area are having is the labor market. With the unemployment levels so low in this Northern Utah region, companies are just stealing from each other and they're just bouncing back and forth. And so we have to be a little bit realistic. Even though all these buildings are being built, some of the companies are not, they're slowing down a little bit of coming in here because the labor market is an issue.
Well, but so I agree. A couple things to think about. One, we're leaking 100,000 people out of our market every day because we don't have the jobs here now. Yeah, that's Salt Lake County's problem if we can find employment here. So all those professional jobs are leaving because we don't have something. So that doesn't really show up in the labor market roles. Yes, there is some friendly competition. There's turnover rates affected by companies sort of doing that with each other. But on the other hand, from a larger economic perspective, when we like to see the wage rate, the average wage rate in Davis and Weaver County go north, not south. So to some extent, some friendly competition drives people to offer better benefit packages, better wages, better career opportunities because they want to retain their people. So some of that just makes people better. If you go to Las Vegas, which you may or may not like, but the competition in the hotel and food industry down there is so fierce that everybody's driven to offer a better product. So the hotels just get better and better and better. The food gets better and better and better because guess what? You have lots of choices, right? Same is true here. If you have a certain skill set, you're going to go where the best job is. Who's going to pay you the most money? So hopefully, yes, there's a little bit of a balance with, we can only promote and grow at a certain rate, but we would like to capture a lot of those professional workers that are leaving our region. We think that we can employ them here locally. We're not going to stop that out migration entirely, but we'd like to slow it down a little bit and retain some of it.
By providing more opportunities of companies relocating here.
Right. Or local companies expanding and staying here.
So I have another question for you as we're discussing this. Mayor Call had a great suggestion a few council meetings ago about being proactive with meeting with these property owners. That's one of the steps that you mentioned before of meeting with them and finding out but kind of open house style, whatever, meeting with them to say, hey, we have a plan. We want to be partners with you. We want to show you what our vision is and help them get on to that vision ahead of time. Even, what are your thoughts on that? I thought it was a great idea. And
well, I think you probably just have to bite off those one location at a time. So okay. I would say the 200-acre industrial property, maybe tackle that collectively and say, I don't know that you can get all 8 landowners in the room together, but to some extent, maybe you can get them in groups of 2 or 3 or individually or whatever.
Reach out to them proactively.
Look, we have an interest in master planning our city. We know you've owned this property for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 2 years, whatever the case may be. We just wanted to, introduce ourselves as city leaders. And tell them, say, hey, look, we get inquiries from our friends at the region and the state about employment opportunities, and we want to see if some of these sites will ever be possibilities. And then you can get a feel from the landowners as to, well, we've never really thought about it. Yes, we're going to develop it ourselves. No, we never want to sell it. Whatever the case may be, just so that you can have a little better feel
of how to move forward.
I would say that's true of your retail properties.
Entice, massage. Hey, I like this idea.
Just try to create a relationship if you don't already have one. At some point, we would like to think that they've got to interact with you somewhere along the line. Now, my guess is a lot of that property has sat within family land ownership for decades, right? Some others have traded hands because there's more commercial activity sort of moving your way. So you probably have a whole, basket full of different options. But I think it's a good idea to just, the smarter you are, the smarter we are about that. The better planning that's done at the local level, then we just end up with, better master plan places for people, to come and go to work. And then you all try to help create the vision. Hopefully the private sector wants to partner with you, and, maybe they've got another idea for that property that we haven't all collectively thought of. Great. Let's all as a team hear about that.
But we need to start that conversation.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, but we need to start that conversation probably sooner than later.
I think so. And it will take you a while. You probably got a lot of different, we looked at just a handful of them the other day up there. I think 3 or 4 different, locations. So it'll, my guess, take a little bit of time to kind of do that. And we can help that way. We want to have a really good active database of what those properties look like, and, get them onto our website so that we can have really every property from North Salt Lake, to where you all are, up to the Weber County border, and say, hey, here's what we've got collectively as a region.
So let me throw something out there, Chris. Years ago, we had U.S. Food US Foods approach us and want to build in that same area.
Right?
And most of the landowners were like all in. We didn't have any, I mean, we had approached them all then, and this is years ago, so not a lot of that's changed hands, I don't think. My concern is this, and we can plan till we can have the best master plan in the world. You've mentioned a couple of times the infrastructure, how important that is to be shovel ready. And I think we're a ways away. I would love to think we were closer than I think we really are. I think we're a little ways away from being able to swallow the infrastructure part of that. Like if there was a road down the middle of the whole thing and we were ready to sell lots, that'd be completely different, right? Very marketable then. But we're a ways away from that. So if we take these first steps and start by contacting the landowners and sharing with them our ideas, how important is it, maybe you could address just for a minute, how important it is that we swallow hard and get the infrastructure in? How important is that step relative to really marketing the land?
Well, I think, I mean, it's a complex question. Some companies that are bigger users want to develop a good chunk of that infrastructure themselves. They have time to do it. It's a build to suit project. Other companies come on the fly, they like to see that infrastructure in place. The last thing you want to do is put a bunch of infrastructure in that, you know, for example, companies may or may not want, right? So you want to be careful with that. So I think, you know, we probably just need to get in and look at some of those individually and see, you know, where the infrastructure, where there's a gap in the infrastructure, what are the potential costs, what are the potential solutions to, you know, getting that put together. Now, for example, you know, your neighbors to the north in Box Elder County have been reasonably successful in recruiting large industrial users. My guess is most of those sites probably didn't have a lot of heavy infrastructure in, but they were willing, they looked at a build to suit. The land was probably a little bit cheaper, a little bit further north, you know, say than your property. And maybe that's why they sort of skipped over your property. I don't know. Maybe you bid on some of those projects, you know, those Procter and Gambles of the world that took those big manufacturing plants to Box Elder County. So, you know, the other thing that we ought to probably do is do a little inventory of those companies that, those big industrial users that went there, find out why they went there, see if we can gather some data on why they either passed over Weber County, wanted to be a little further north, look at land prices and try to figure out, you know, it's always nice to figure out why companies go and do what they do.
That's a great, I think that's a fabulous suggestion of finding that out.
And we can do that. We can help you with that. I mean, we're good friends with the Box Elder County Economic Development Team. We can gather some of that data and maybe help sort of figure out the, you know, even the broader regional picture.
Chris, though, piggybacking on what Kevin said, I think though that at least when he mentioned that, that's probably something that the council and the city needs to realize though, that if we want businesses to come in or, you know, manufacturing and stuff, that needs to be on the table as something that we're willing to do as a city to proactively participate in providing some of that infrastructure.
Right. Well, and in a lot of cases, that comes with the project. I mean,
right.
You probably don't have the resources to do some of the heavy infrastructure, but when a company comes in, they want to set up a project area, maybe some of the tax increment incentives through the property tax increases can help, you know, build some of that infrastructure. There may be other local public monies available, you know, to help get those things done. And so, yeah, we should just sort of look at that, maybe make a laundry list of how expensive these public
Right.
infrastructure pieces are. Some of them may be out of your sort of your ability to do that. Okay, well, at least we know that up front. We know what needs to be done. And maybe if the corporate users like your site well enough, well then, and their timing is close enough to making that happen, maybe there's a way to get that done in a partnership with a little bit of tax increment financing. So, but yeah, I'm happy to help create a little case study of some of the other big industrial users, where they landed, why they landed, what kind of incentive packages were put together, what infrastructure was there prior to them coming, and maybe just see what we can learn.
I would like to see
Why,
that.
that's why we kind of started the, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and said, let's start at the things we can look at, like the regional detention basin, the railroad crossing. Somebody
Yep.
comes in and you're gonna say, well, you're gonna put this road here, but you're gonna need to work with the railroad to get a railroad crossing. They're probably gonna just, okay, never mind. So if we can do some of those things that we can do, can we put a 80-foot road all the way up through that property? No, we can't.
Right.
$10, $12 million, and we don't have $10, $12 million to do.
But that site is going to become increasingly more important over the next 5 years. So at some point, it may not be tomorrow, but as again, as BDO gets filled up, other places, there becomes fewer opportunities for industrial properties that have that kind of freeway exposure and
With what the mayor
that
said,
kind of
though,
access to a pretty good labor pool. I mean, you're still close enough to a pretty big labor pool.
with
And
what,
as far as the existing 200 and what I think it's almost 300 acres, 280, I believe, but the property to the south that abuts the current road and the current industrial park, if you will, is the most dynamic. That property has changed hands several times, and it seems to have the most action on it, whereas the property more to the north is kind of just, like you said, maybe sat there for 50 years. They're kind of interested in it, sort of. Somebody will come and offer money, but that's what we found 13, 14 years ago when we were going with these people.
So some of the what Mayor said about having those conversations with Union Pacific and the things that we can do, we can have those conversations.
Yes.
We can
Yes.
kind of network and provide those, like the infrastructure. Yeah, we don't have 12 million, wish we did, but we could have those conversations. So we could say, look, you guys, if you build it, they will come. We've got everybody on board. We're a team here. So kind of that philosophy, is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah. And I think we'll find out as you get into, say, that one property or other properties, some will be more ready to go than others.
Right.
Some of your other retail properties, you may want to start marketing. I mean, maybe you participated in some of the, retail outreach shows with the other cities and counties that get involved with that. If you haven't, it's probably something that you should consider doing. But I have just, from some action steps. Now I've got a new assistant that I'm bringing on that's going to help with this real estate database. So we'll be happy to work with Holland Wilbanks at the county, and then with whoever at the city is the best point person with making sure that that database is really accurate. And so we can help you work on that. We can work on the case studies with the other industrial users from Box Elder County. I would say you could help us with perhaps some of who the landowners are. Give us some history there. You probably have a better, we can look up who the landowners are through the property tax records, but you all probably have a lot better feel for the history there. So maybe, as we're getting the real estate database put together, I think you can guide us a little bit.
I think we'll want to reach out to them and see if they're willing sellers and see what they think their property is worth, and see where we go from there. Maybe.
And I think, I think it can be a friendly conversation. Say, hey, look, we're we're doing some general master planning. We want to get a good feel for, you know, what you as landowners are thinking. Hopefully it should be non-threatening. It's like, hey, this is my property and, you know, we're going to tell you what we're going to do with it. I think you can do it in a friendly way to say, look, we don't have any particular intent here. We just kind of want to find out what yours are. We're getting inquiries from the state and the region about employment opportunities up our way. We think we're going to get more of those over time, and we want to be ready to respond. I think they'll appreciate that.
I think so too. Ends up being a win-win if you approach it the right way.
And people have to understand that they say, God, you know what? We bid on 10 of these projects. Okay, bid on 10 more. That's what I say. I mean, don't get discouraged because you bid on a few projects and they didn't come your way. I can tell you plenty of locations that have spent years. Sometimes it takes years or multiple rounds of inquiries before, you know, a project lands. But if we're not in the game, if you're not in the game, then they're just going to simply find another home. There's always another place for companies to go. It doesn't mean you want to force them in or do something that, you know, doesn't fit your master plan, but why not be a little bit outward in terms of
Proactive.
your proactiveness to get what you want, as opposed to just sort of reacting to potentially what is coming your way.
All right, so when Bill set this up, he told Chris it'd be about an hour. We have 9 more minutes before that hour hits. Is there anybody else that has any questions they want to ask Chris, so we can get time to respond to questions? If not, Chris, you got anything else you want to tell us before we let you go?
No, I just would say that let's keep the door open. We'll sort of circle back with you. Don't be bashful though about calling me, calling Holland at the county, and making sure that you know about everything that we're doing. If you don't hear from us, call us. We'll hopefully reach back to you with our real estate database and some of these other things. But you know, as you hear things at the local level, sometimes we don't have the industry intelligence that you do. So let's turn it into a partnership, and hopefully some good things will happen.
So
The database you're putting together, does it, you want kind of all our inventory, right? Areas where.
Well, the way we're doing it right now, we've got some flexibility on this, is we're trying to collect every 5-acre site and up that's
Okay.
commercially developable.
Okay.
You know, mostly office and industrial, but we'll take your retail ones as well, because I know you've got a little retail corridor there. But so we don't want to collect every 1/2-acre site. That's going to be a little bit too cumbersome to try to manage. But if you have a 4-acre site that's really cool, say, hey, we think this should be included, we'll include it. But 5 is kind of our general minimum and up.
Well, I think we'll put together the inventory for us. It would be really nice if the city had a complete inventory, you know.
Yep.
Mr. Hanson.
So you can help us identify some of the ones that we miss. We'll bring the list to you of how we've compiled it, and then you'll say, oh, well, you're missing this one, this one, this one. Great. Or ownership has changed hands here. That one's no longer active. So hopefully we can kind of work on that together. We'll start it, and you guys can help us finish it.
So Mayor, is Chris, is this point of contact you and Jill? Is that who you guys are going to work with? Is that?
Yeah, Jill's
Okay.
gonna put this together. I think Bill's
Okay.
already asked her.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us who you want to, you know, who your point of contact should be, and we'll try to run the data through, you know, that individual, or it could be multiple people if you want to, and so that we're not sort of stumbling over each other. I would say on our end, it's mainly myself and Holland Wilbanks at the county, and then we can take it up the food chain from there. But tell us who you'd like us to interact with, and we'll get going.
All righty, perfect. Any other questions?
I'm excited, Chris. Thank you for that information.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
taking.
you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for including me. And we look forward to a lot of great things. I mean, these economic development's a team sport. It really is. And the better we work together, there's a lot of bumps in the road trying to put these projects together. We understand that, but the more we work together, I think the more success we're going to have.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.
All right,
You're
everybody.
awesome.
We'll
Thank
be
you.
in touch. Take care.
Appreciate you taking your time on this special night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, good thing we went ahead too, so be safe.
Woohoo.
Meeting adjourned.